3 Mile Island is being restarted. The site of the worst nuclear accident in American history is coming back online, and the reason is artificial intelligence. Microsoft signed a 20-year agreement to buy the output of the restarted reactor, 835 megawatts, enough to power roughly 800,000 homes, none of which will get any of it. That last sentence is the whole video, so let me be precise about it. The comparison to 800,000 homes is how utility capacity is conventionally described. It is not a claim that homes will be served. This output is contracted to one company for one purpose. The reactor is not rejoining the grid as ordinary supply. It is being bought. So here is the plan. What is actually being restarted and what that costs? How big this pattern has become, because 3 Mile Island is not an outlier. Why AI money succeeded where 40 years of energy policy failed. Then the strongest case that this is unambiguously good news, which is a serious case. And the structural catch underneath it. Because this is not one unusual deal. Every major American AI company has now signed at least one nuclear agreement. Across more than a dozen deals, the committed capacity approaches 10 gigawatts. That is not a pilot program. That is a build-out on the scale of a national energy policy, executed by 4 companies on their own balance sheets. Here is who signed what. Microsoft, the 3 Mile Island restart, plus an agreement with the fusion company Helion. Amazon, 1.92 gigawatts at Susquehanna, plus small modular reactors with X-Energy. Google, small modular reactors with Kairos Power. And Meta, up to 6.6 gigawatts across agreements with Vistra, Oklo, and TerraPower. Now the interesting question. Why now? American nuclear has been effectively unbuildable for 4 decades, and the reason was never mainly physics or even safety. It was finance. A reactor takes 10 to 15 years and enormous capital, and no utility could guarantee anyone would buy the output at a price that justified it in year 14. Nuclear did not need a breakthrough. It needed a customer. And that is exactly what a 20-year power purchase agreement provides. Someone creditworthy, contractually committed to buying the output at an agreed price for 2 decades. That single document converts a reactor from a speculative bet into a financeable asset. Which is why these companies have done in 18 months what the federal government and the utility industry could not manage in 40 years. So let me make the positive case properly, because it is strong and this channel is usually the one pointing at costs. This is firm, carbon-free power running around the clock, which is the specific thing wind and solar cannot supply on their own. It is being financed privately without a public subsidy fight. It revives an industrial supply chain and a workforce that were close to gone. And it does what environmental advocacy failed to do for 40 years, which is get reactors built. And I want to give that its full weight. If you care about decarbonization, a decade of climate policy did not restart a single reactor, and an AI capacity shortage restarted several. That should be uncomfortable for a lot of people, including me. Sometimes the thing that moves an industry is not the argument. It is a buyer. And we should stop and acknowledge which site this is. 3 Mile Island is where American nuclear power effectively ended. The 1979 accident at Unit 2 released radiation, terrified a continent, and did more than any policy to freeze reactor construction for a generation. Unit 1, the reactor being restarted, is not the one that failed. It ran safely for decades afterwards and was shut in 2019 for economic reasons, not safety ones. But the symbolism is doing real work here in both directions, and anyone who pretends otherwise is selling something. And the objections to nuclear did not disappear because a technology company signed a contract. The waste question is still unresolved in the United States, with no permanent repository and spent fuel sitting in storage at the plants that made it. Construction of genuinely new capacity, as opposed to restarting existing reactors, still runs long and over budget. And a 20-year agreement is a long time in an industry where the buyer's own compute demand may look nothing like this in 10 years. None of that makes the restart wrong. It makes it a bet. Now the catch, and it is structural rather than moral. When a data center buys a reactor's entire output under a dedicated agreement, that power is not added to the pool everyone else draws from. It is carved out of it. The generation is new, which is genuinely good. But the demand it serves is also new, and it arrives with a contract that puts it first in the queue. So here is the number I would put on a chart if I only had one. 835 megawatts. Restarted. 0 of it available to the grid that the plant sits inside. Not because anybody did anything improper. Because that is what the contract says. And it is worth putting the scale in proportion because 835 megawatts sounds enormous and is not, relative to what it is being built for. The 4 companies signing these agreements are collectively guiding to hundreds of billions of dollars of capital spending this year, most of it on facilities that need power continuously. Around 10 gigawatts of committed nuclear is a serious number, and it is still being outrun by the demand curve that produced it. This is not the AI industry solving its power problem. It is the AI industry beginning to pay for part of it. And there is a local story here that mostly gets lost under the national one. A restarted reactor is a substantial employer in a specific county, with skilled jobs that pay well and a tax base that had already written the plant off. The community around 3 Mile Island lost that when Unit 1 closed in 2019. It gets it back. Which is a genuine benefit, landing on identifiable people in a place that had been told this industry was finished. That deserves saying alongside everything else, because on this channel the local effects usually run the other way. And here is what I cannot tell you, which matters. Announced capacity is not delivered capacity, and some of these agreements involve reactor designs that do not yet exist commercially. 3 Mile Island is not scheduled to generate until 2027. Small modular reactors have missed timelines before, repeatedly. And a dedicated agreement can still relieve grid pressure indirectly by removing a very large buyer from the general market. So what is this? I think it is the clearest example yet of something this channel keeps running into. AI is not simply consuming public infrastructure. It is also building infrastructure at a speed and scale the public sector has not managed in a generation. And it is building it privately for itself under contract. Which means the question was never whether AI takes more than it gives. It is who ends up holding the thing that gets built. So where do you land? Is this the best climate news in 20 years, where private demand finally solved the financing problem that killed nuclear, and the whole system benefits from reactors existing at all? Or is it the privatization of the grid, where the only new firm clean power gets built under contract to whoever can afford a 20-year commitment, and everyone else keeps queuing? Tell me which, and tell me what would change your mind. Everything here is sourced in the description.